You're listening to Data Center Therapy. Please take a number, and an engineer will be right with you.
Good day, everyone, and welcome back to yet another episode of Data Center Therapy. I'm your host, Matt Yette, and alongside me is my co-host, Matt Cozzolino. Matt, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. You know, each episode of DCT, we dive into the wide range of technologies that make up this beautiful sandbox called IT that we all kick around and play in. We share our hopes and dreams, opinions, both positive and critical alike, all with a touch of empathy, because at the end of the day, we all need a seat on that couch. So we are joined, it's been a minute since we've had this particular guest on the show, but y'all should, I say that with the most Southern American drawl as I can, y'all should remember our friend from the North, Mr. Shane Bradley. Shane, welcome.
Good morning. How are you guys?
Doing all right. You are not, are you persona non grata, or are you just hanging up there because your family's up there right now?
We got all that family, yeah.
Just because family's here, that's it. Like I keep saying.
You haven't been banned?
No, I'm definitely missing Washington.
Well, we're missing you, man.
Yeah.
We're definitely looking forward to things being a little eased up here and get you back down here, and with family in tow, too, most importantly.
Absolutely.
Most importantly.
Yep.
Yeah. So the reason we have Shane on is, while we don't have a solid date nailed down yet, we're looking at fall 2021, which, as we all know, will be here before you know it, right? I mean, we're already
right around the corner,
creeping up on summer here, which I'm excited about. But Shane, what is the exact title of this class?
So this is going to be VMware vSphere 7 Advanced. And
okay.
Really what I'm aiming for with this is we've had, vSphere 6.7 Advanced, we've had vSphere 7 Intro, and I want to take it to the next level where we're not really covering the same type of topics, but really taking and building on what we've had in previous classes, so you can take your environment and really make sure it's running really, really good.
Nice.
So is taking one of your earlier classes a prereq to this?
It would be good if you have some knowledge. It's not a prereq, but definitely having some VMware knowledge coming into the class would be good.
Gotcha. So I wouldn't have had to go to the 6.7 Advanced or even the 7.0 Intro necessarily to go to this, especially if I've got some chops in vSphere.
Absolutely. I would 100% agree with that.
Some real hands-on VMware, not like I'm the junior admin, or is it appropriate for them?
Yeah, I would say if you've cloned a VM, you should probably have more knowledge than that.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
What is this cloning?
Like Orphan Black? Like cloning?
How many snapshots should I have on my VM? Is a dozen too many?
Oh, well, as long as they're not older than 3 years, Kaz, I think you're good.
Oh, sweet. I'm at like 2.5 right now, so I'll start waterfalling those off the end.
Yeah.
Not to pick on Shane, and this is not meant to pick on him, but it's just that little mention that I did of Orphan Black. Either one of you gents seen that show?
I have not seen it, no.
So I fell in love / had a TV crush on the main actress in there. She's Canadian. Tatiana Maslany, I think is her name. And it's a show, I think it went 3 seasons. I didn't make it the whole way through. 4 seasons, something like that. It's about a girl who, she's kind of a grifter, street person, and she ends up watching this woman at a train station kill herself. Like, that's like the first scene. But right before she does, the woman looks and turns to her, and it's her. It looks just like her. And it's like, what the heck? But the woman's all business-like, dressed up, but the person who kills herself. It turns out there's this whole, basically, she's a clone.
Uh-huh.
And they end up finding each other and trying to learn what this is all about and all of this. And it's funny, I don't think she ever won an Emmy for it. But I'm telling you, so first of all, the tech in the show is amazing, because the way they stitch together the same actress having conversations with 2, 3, 4 of her own selves, and it doesn't look like a bunch of, junky put together stuff. And her acting, she's not playing, some people try to kill one character, right? Most actors play one role in a movie or a show. She plays like 12 characters throughout the series.
Wow.
And all of them have their own accent, their own dialect, their own gait, their every
Their own
mannerisms.
history, their own
Wow.
person, right?
And so she's been nominated, I think, for Emmys, and it's funny because it's like, we'll nominate James Spader playing this guy, and we'll nominate Kiefer Sutherland playing this guy, and we'll nominate Tatiana Maslany for playing Susie, Jane, Ellis, and it goes through and it lists all the characters that she played in that show, and the fact that she doesn't win on top of that is kind of a travesty. But Shane, she's Canadian,
Well,
so there is the thread tie.
yeah. Well, I'm going to throw the plug out there. Hopefully she finds this podcast and listens to it, but she should get a paycheck for every character she plays, not just one for the overall series.
There you go.
Look at Shane. Can you pull some strings and maybe get her on the podcast? Maybe.
I don't think I can. No.
All you Canadians know each other, right? That's how that works.
Yeah, there's only 12 of us.
Oh goodness.
Yeah.
Oh, Cos leveling me there. Okay. All right. Now back to the topic at hand here. So there are a few advanced things that I think with vSphere we certainly can all fall victim to almost taking it for granted, right? At this stage of its product life cycle, the hypervisor is a very mature product, but of course the magic is in the management of all of that. So
Yeah.
there's always going to be room for growth there. But I'm just looking at some of the things that a lot of times when customers ask me, I wish I knew more, I had done more, but it's chicken egg. I don't see a lot of use out there, and maybe I might not see a lot of potential for use out there, but nevertheless, there are features that people are asking about.
Yep.
And one of them, Shane, I don't know how much you have dove in on this yet, but NFS 4. Can we talk about that a little bit? Or 4.1, right? Or every time I'm mapping a drive and it's NFS, it's 3. Boom. It's a default for me.
Yeah.
Because it's been around forever, right? Yeah.
Yep. Everybody's
But
used to
4's
it.
been around a while too now. So what's the deal here?
Well, believe it or not, I was teaching the vSphere 7 intro class, and a couple people kind of said, hey, are we going to delve into version 4 of NFS? And I was kind of like, well, we weren't planning on it in this class, so for me, I want to actually bring it into the advanced class, let people kind of experience a little bit to see if it's something that they actually want to start using, because you guys, Coz and you've probably seen it that a lot of people haven't adopted version 4 yet because V3's been easy and it works for them. But having a couple people ask for it, I really want to kind of touch on it and see if it is a thing for people if they truly need NFS v4 for their vSphere environment.
So, strangely enough, literally last night was my first time going into my storage array and saying, hey, let me turn on v4. Let me try to switch some of my storage. Right? Let me try to switch some of my storage over that. I'm doing it inside of Ubuntu, but it was surprisingly easy. Like, I just set the button on the storage array and changed my fstab to use version 4, and it mounts and I can write to it. Is there anything different inside of VMware that changes as far as how I mount it, or is it still just that easy?
It seems that way. You need the Kerberos, right? You got to use that, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. And you can't use both versions at the same time, which is the other thing, right? So
I can't mount a version 3 volume on one array and then a version 4 on a different array?
same host, right?
Okay.
So
Right.
And is pNFS is NFS 4, but NFS 4 isn't necessarily pNFS. Is that true? The persistent connection? Because that's what I read as one of the big headliners is NFS, but with multipathing. Is that basically what you can get out of that?
multipathing for NFS v4, yeah, you bet. The pNFS I'd have to look at. Yeah.
Yeah, that seems to be one of the headliner features too. You said it, one of the last words you used, Shane, as you were talking about what you were trying to dig into is the word need, right? And
Yeah.
so much of my conversations with my customers and my colleagues is you can flash a neon sign and say, cool feature, cool feature, cool feature. What does it satisfy? How does my quality of life improve? Who benefits, right?
Yep.
Where is that benefit coming from? And if it's just because it's different and neat, and you're introducing risk with a very little or zero gain possibility there. So the risk reward thing, I just go into, okay, what are we trying to fix or make better? And I think that's how I look at NFS4. And so then I look at NFS3, where I'm currently sitting. I say, Mr. NFS3, how could you do me a little better? And in terms of a foundational storage platform, basically, you're at the mercy of your storage array doing gratuitous ARP, should there be a failover, right? And that could be a problem.
Or you're having to set up a port channel or a lag, right?
That is true. Yep. So it does kind of reach into the networking aspect of it in that layer.
That's always been, like, whenever I talk to customers about NFS versus block, it was always iSCSI handles all my pathing for me, and it can use all the multipaths and all that fun stuff. And NFS, I have to do it at the hardware layer, or do it at the network layer, and say here's redundant links using a lag, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But your paths, you still have to build those for iSCSI and lay them on there.
Yeah, I mean, it discovers, but
that
was what I was looking for too.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the one thing I'll point out about the NFS4 is we want to try and expose it to you, because the last thing I think any of us want to do is make our environment more complicated just for the sake of making it complicated. And if NFS v3 is still going to work for you, you might decide to stick with it. So.
Well, definitely, I think that could be a very strong topic in that advanced class, because it's something, again, one of those things that you've taken for granted for so many years. I've run NFS 3 for, well, we're coming up on it's over a decade now, right?
Almost a couple of decades.
Yeah, easy.
Well, right. Well, me, I mean, I'm not as old as you, Cozzo, but I mean, actually I am, but
I'm older than both of you.
Yeah. But that would be a cool one, I think, to explore. What's that?
NFS version 3, 1995.
I was, depending on when in 95, I was probably 13.
I wasn't even in high school yet. Yeah.
Wow.
I will say one of the things with security on storage is that's traditionally one of the ones that doesn't get looked at, right?
Yeah.
Like we talk about, you're teaching that microseg, or I'm teaching the microseg class. You're doing the VMware one. And all of the zero trust, all of the layers of the onion that, secure your environment, and yet here's my NFS mount, and anyone on the subnet can mount this data store, right? That's kind of where we end up with that. So
I mean, you can do better than that, right? I hate to damn the protocol based on sloppy settings that can be tightened up, and they can be, right? You can specify a single IP.
Yep.
But you also could have somebody misbehaving and advertising at an IP gets on the same network segment and says, I'm so-and-so, and away you go. So, yes, as point well taken. Another thing, if I can step on you, Shane, and kind of put you on the spot, is this is one of those features that I heard more from customers more than VMware, our partner, on this, and I kind of had to backwards learn it, but customers were like, hey, my Skyline said this.
Yep.
And the very first thing, I go, what the hell is Skyline?
They
like,
pushed
what?
that button out and made you turn it on really easy.
They snuck that thing right in. Because by default, do you want to join the customer? No, I don't want to join any of that crap. No.
Yep. Exactly.
But apparently they tie it to a pretty nice carrot now.
Yeah. And I think they're building a lot more of it into the UI than having to run that VM anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So
I know when you got those vSAN hosts, those virtual vSAN hosts set up, that was exactly what I was using to make sure all the errors were clean on that when I was cloning them.
Yep.
Yeah, I would assume nested vSAN is probably very angry as far as the monitoring goes.
It was surprisingly light. Yeah. There wasn't a lot it was complaining about. Your SCSI driver is on a non-supported thing. You can go ahead and ignore that.
Yeah.
It was like 1 or 2 errors, but that's it.
That's not bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just for you folks out there, we've built our training class and we've incorporated nested vSANs so you can get exposed to that as well if you don't use it. So
it's pretty cool. My thing was I had that vSphere 6.5 client version in my home lab, and that was the one where they said HTML5 is now feature parity. Next version will be ripping out the Flash client.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, great. And I had occasion to rebuild my 3 NUC vSAN cluster. through the HTML5 client, I had all my networking set up, I promise you. Ports, MTUs, everything was good. And it would say, like, it would have internal network issues between a couple of the hosts that can't talk on the vSAN, service port. It was insane. I finally opened a ticket, and they were like, yeah, you've got to do that through the Flash client in that version. And I'm like, oof.
Yeah.
Yes. So 6, 7, and up, I think. 7.0 certainly it's smooth sailing with that. vSAN has greatly improved. I personally still don't love the black boxiness of it still.
Yeah.
I still feel like, don't worry about it. We're shuffling your data around over here. It's there. Don't worry. I can't get the warm blanket out of there yet. But and I don't know if I'll ever get there.
It takes a little work to get to that command line. Same thing with NSX. It's like, where is that detailed tool to show me all of the little block objects and whatnot, right? It's hidden.
Or like a million little commands at the command prompt, and then you have to piece together that information to build the story. Now, look, we're troubleshooters, right? That's not necessarily a foreign concept, but something like storage, I still love the appliance, the Pure or the NetApp or whatever that handles it well, and that's just me.
Yeah, because from my point of view, I thought vSAN for a while seemed to stall, and then VMware kind of really revived it by VMware on AWS and their VCF now. They're really pushing hard for vSAN for the management component, so it seems like it's getting a resurgence that way.
Can we pick on VMware a little bit if we can?
Do we not always?
Are we going to get edited in post here by the powers that be? I'm not sure. But you said VCF and vCloud Foundation, Shane, and I know that there is a large push from VMware for the advertising the VMware cloud options on the two public hyperscalers, basically Azure and AWS, and all of this. And going through those exercises, it's apparent that there's a commitment up front. You have to basically build out at least a 3-node cluster in these cloud environments. And when you think about cloud and lifting and shifting and scaling and being elastic, I certainly don't think, well, I'm basically building a 3-node cluster in another data center first, and then I can do all of this. It doesn't feel cloudy to me. It feels like a less flexible colo arrangement in a way. But do you guys remember vCloud Air?
I do remember vCloud Air.
I just look back to it as this, like, an idea that went out there that VMware stood behind for a few months and then went away with it. But from what I understand, it was it's basically vCloud.
It was, yeah.
On its own, in its own data centers. And I just feel like this was like 2014, 2015. If they just ran with that and invested in that, I feel like they would be, obviously the cloud, again, we've talked about this, it's not just running VMs. And I think Azure and AWS have made it so it's not just about running VMs. They want these microservices, right? And they consume them that way. And that's fair. But there's still, obviously, VMC that demonstrates that there's a massive appetite for virtualizing your infrastructure, IaaS, and running your VMs in the cloud. And even Microsoft, Hyper-V can't shuffle up to Azure. There's a conversion process.
Yep.
vCloud Air would have allowed you to just go proop vMotion. Like, does that sound like a missed opportunity to anyone else on this episode?
I understand your point. I think under the covers, there's probably some technical issues that they had to address with that and get it built out so that they could just put it there, right? Like,
building a data center is no small cost either.
No.
Right. And getting set up with Azure or AWS to be able to spin up ESX hosts on their bare metal, right? That to me seems like the biggest hurdle that they had to jump through, or the biggest hoop that they had to jump through to make that work.
But I mean, if you don't have that, if you have your own data centers and you're just basically coloing vSphere for your customers as a service, that seems to me like if they could go back and do it again, they would focus on that, because I think they missed the opportunity with that. And then Azure and AWS got so ubiquitous that, oops, how do we get VMware back into the story? Because there's still there is a need for that portability. And right now, and I don't know if ever, you don't have pure portability. The only way to get Azure VMs portable is to run Azure Stack on premises. And is that still a thing? I think they're still doing
I haven't
that.
heard that name in forever.
Right. But I mean, it's basically run Azure on premise. And AWS does the same thing. They have that locked cabinet that you have on premise installed, but it's basically AWS, so you can bing bing back and forth. But this would have been, hey, take your on premise infrastructure and have that be portable out to the cloud pretty seamlessly. I just feel like all the things we're talking about now, AWS or VMC and AWS, VMC and Azure, are like, you guys had this. You were ringing this bell like 5-6 years ago, and you kind of missed the boat. It's a shame.
Yeah, it wasn't a money thing to him, I don't think.
Yeah, well, I guess we'll see.
Yeah.
All right, Maddie, I'm going to let you cherry pick a topic to pick on Shane about. I've had 2 swings at him so far. So,
I'd like to know, Shane. We're going to go back to storage a little bit. I'd like to know what's your preference: NFS for a data store or VMFS, and why?
I'm an NFS guy. Well, there's a bunch of reasons, I guess. I have a few friends that work for VMware. They all have their VCDX designations and stuff, and they are all NFS guys. They like the simplicity of it. I like the simplicity of it. I did work for a storage vendor that was NFS, so I could be biased there a little bit.
A little partial, a little biased, yeah.
I don't hate iSCSI, but you got to set it up correctly, right? And we've seen it at a couple customer sites where if you don't set up your iSCSI port bindings and all that correctly, it can cause you a little bit of grief. NFS is just straightforward. It's there. And that's why I like it. But
okay,
yeah.
I was looking at that as like what is it, VMFS 6? What's that bring to the table?
Really, the storage reclamation or gaining your storage back. I guess that's probably the big thing that I've seen. But it's one of those things that you gotta. VMware keeps moving us ahead, right? So why stick on VMFS 5 when you can move to VMFS 6 and get some of the benefits of it? So, yeah, definitely wanted...
That might be one argument in favor of vSAN. Is one of the things that I struggle with sometimes is the estimated storage remaining. So VMFS 6, right? The reclamation is very important. But then you've got a deduping storage array on the back end that VMware doesn't care about. It's a file system. So whatever the storage array is doing underneath the covers to maintain capacity and efficiencies isn't necessarily turned around and exposed on the logical level to the consuming customer, VMware in this case.
Yeah.
And listen, Pure is fantastic. I love it. When you've got a global dedupe average of 4.8 to 1, and that's global. That's not cherry picking data. So you're almost 5 to 1 efficiency ratio. It's incredible. But I've had customers, and rightfully so, have trouble wrapping their head around, okay, well, I got a 100 gig data store or a terabyte data store on my vSphere cluster. It says it's using 500 gig. VMware thinks there's 500 gig free. How much is free on the Pure? And there's not a wonderful answer.
Yeah.
It's, and so even if you do thick provisioned, Pure's going to eat those zeros up and compress them down.
That's exactly what I saw just recently. I was looking at that and it kind of changed my outlook on it. Was like, at this point, sure, let's make everything thick provisioned.
Yeah,
VMware has all of it. Go for it. Whatever. It's gonna get handled on the storage array on the back end, right?
Have either one of you ever run into a thin provision overwriting and filling an aggregate?
I can't say as I have. No.
I had one customer.
Yeah.
This is not a vendor-specific problem. This is not unique to any of them, but it happened to be a NetApp, and they had an aggregate, which is data pool, that had, I don't know, whatever, X amount of storage. And they had certain virtual machines that were running Cisco call center.
Mm-hmm.
And Cisco call center was thin provisioned. And they were doing a file server migration that happened to share the same aggregate over the weekend. and they migrated a lot of data, and it filled the aggregate. Call center went offline. Sure.
Wow.
Right? How do you get around that? Any thick provisioned volumes already have their data space spoken for.
Mm-hmm.
So those volumes do not get turned offline in the case of an aggregate filling up, because there's no danger that any other rights will encroach on their reserved space with that thick provisioning. So that was one case where I'm like, okay, I can absolutely see the reason to thick provision systems that you want protected in case of the aggregate filling up. That was one way of doing it.
Yeah, because historically, I've always been taught the systems or the VMs that you want to thick provision are usually databases and Active Directory servers.
Yeah, there's a
That's
handful.
probably not a bad idea.
Yeah, there's a handful of like this VM, that VM. All of those want to be thick, but
Yep. Which brings us kind of to another portion of what we want to cover in the advanced class is really Matt's case. Ran at a disk space, looking at monitoring of your resources and also setting up proper alerts, because I see a lot of people just leave out of the box canned defaults for their alerting
defaults.
and stuff. Yeah.
What do you like to turn on besides just the defaults?
That's a tough one because it's a case by case. It's you got to look at every customer and go, what do you guys really want to be alerted on? And then look at it on a case-by-case basis. I don't think there's any one that says, turn this on globally for every single customer, because it just doesn't fit. But, I think in what Matt kind of brought up was definitely disk space. You're going to want to know how full your array is getting and stuff like that. CPU and memories, kind of another one that you're going to want to keep an eye on. Matt, I have to start calling you MC, but
you can call me Yeti. That's
or
fine.
Yeti,
It's easy.
But
Cause is fairly common for me too.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. But Cause, you saw it in the lab, like the IVOXY lab, when we were looking at it last week with Ryan, and even our CPU was like spiked pretty high because you had VMs running for your micro seg class, and we had to turn some of them off and that kind of thing. So
CPUs have never been a problem for me, but in our lab, they are.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do we use those hosts?
Make them think.
So yeah,
That's been my challenge, Shane. Yeah, like, for example, VROPS for a number of years. What it used to be called, vCops, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
vCops, not VROPS. It was the easiest product in the world to set up. I mean, just whatever. It's a deployment. You plug it into vSphere, away you go. Okay, now what? That's a pretty dashboard, but how do I have it tell me what I need to know? Well, what do you want to monitor? Well, I don't know. What should I monitor? It's kind of the age-old question,
kind of
and
thing,
yeah, it still pervades nowadays.
yeah. I'll even add to that. I was actually listening to one of the sessions at VMware Empower for the partners yesterday, and VROps 8.4, they've added a lot more capability for that app to actually interface with and make changes to the vSphere environment based on what the customer wants set up, which
The last I looked at it, there was a make recommendations and enact recommendations. Is it a little better than that now?
it seems like it's going to be, yeah.
Okay.
I don't want to speak like wholeheartedly to this. This is everything it does because it's only like a 30-minute session, right? So, but it definitely sounds worth delving into, I think, quite a bit more now and finding that capability.
So something like an IDS, but now more of an IPS, something actually proactive.
It definitely seems like
that's good.
Yeah, they definitely sound like they're building a lot more proactive into it.
I think we saw the writing on the wall too when they've got proactive HA coming out a couple features ago, where you could see something going on and want to bring a server into maintenance mode.
Yeah.
I finally
And
turned
again, I
that
think
on
that's-
with a customer. That was kind of neat.
Did they? I mean, obviously, hopefully, you didn't get to see it in action. That's one of those things. It's like, I hope it works when I need to have it work.
How do I test this thing?
Right. I want to say that they had one host that was already sitting there with some memory issues or something, so it was like we're waiting on a part, and I think it triggered on that, if I recall correctly.
That'd be neat.
But it was interesting. It actually, the proactive HA actually went and, like, it was UCS, so it actually went and talked to the Cisco UCS manager to get status of the physical hardware. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's very neat. I get to do kind of rounding out of this and transitioning out to wrapping this episode up because I don't take any more of Shane's time, but this has been awesome. Speaking of UCS, I actually have the occasion to design out my very first chassis swap.
How's that
I'm not
going?
I'm not talking about new chassis with new I/O modules and just moving blades. No, the I/O modules are coming too, because the chassis in itself is the first generation UCS chassis that is actually end of life. And you're like, what? Sheet metal just went end of life. And end of support is later this year. Yeah. So, Cozzo, I think the ones you put in at your previous employer were just new enough. Where they weren't the OG chassis.
Maybe we did. I actually went back out there and we did a hardware swap on that chassis. The benefit there was we had enough free slots in the chassis I could move blades over.
You did, and also that was with new I/O modules as well.
No.
Wait, what?
No, it was the same I/O modules.
Oh, you moved the I/O modules into the new chassis?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I'm going to go back and look at this.
Yeah.
Okay.
There wasn't any new I/O modules, so we had to reuse
Weird.
them.
Like a Canadian
Here, I
does.
thought we
fight,
ordered the...
fight.
I thought we ordered a new chassis, but it was a Smart Play bundle because it was actually cheaper just to get them with the I/O modules in that case. Oh, look at him. He's looking. His confidence is shaking. If you could see this right now, I think I correct. Well, listen, I look forward to the apology. I'm sure it'll happen off air, though, right? But I'll see if I can capture that surreptitiously.
Yeah.
I'll wear a wire,
Yeah.
Shane.
There you go.
Yeah. Hey, I want to finish on something. I was at a customer site. Do you guys see a benefit of having like more than one or two virtual standard switches on a host? This customer had like between 6 and 8 different V switches on the same host, and I'd like to really know if that's kind of the jump off the cliff and move to VDSs.
I don't think that standard switches to distributed switches are the deciding factor on that. Having done everything I've done with NSX, you really, if you just have a single pair of network adapters, you really have the ability to rip the rug out from under you if you're trying to have everything run on a single host. And for me, way back in the day when it was 1 gig, it was like, all right, here's 2 adapters for this, here's 2 adapters for storage, here's 2 adapters for
12 cables coming out of the back of there.
Yeah, right. And then 10 gig came around, and it's like, well, let's collapse this all down onto 2 10 gig adapters because no one's ever going to use that.
But I think a lot of people carry that 1 gig, multiple 1 gig mindset into the 10 gig world too. It's just like old habits die hard. I think they have that kind of mentality still sometimes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I saw that. It was like, let's get 2, 4, 6 cables into my network cables into my box, and then 10 gig rolled around, and let's go down to 2 because we don't need that. And now with everything converged and all of that, I'm saying at least 4 just for the link redundancy. So that's
been, I really like UCS for that, right?
Yeah.
Because I can put as many physical network cards,
Kinda.
quote unquote.
You run into some
in the
issues
back
because it's still only one piece of hardware.
Yep.
You still have the backing reality of what the bandwidth is, yes.
So, I don't know. I'd seen, like, every now and then you need to do some weird, like network backing for a virtual F5 or a virtual firewall or something, and that generates, hey, let's spin up a dedicated virtual switch and not bolt it onto any physical network adapters so that I can have inside my host transit kind of a thing. But to me, no. VLAN tag everything and dump it onto a pair of links.
Do you feel like there should be a mix or could be a mix of standard and DV switches, something like storage and management for the host on a standard switch, and the more like VM port group stuff that you want to distribute everywhere on a DV switch? I've seen that, and
Yeah.
something about that makes me comfortable.
I'm okay with that. Yeah. I
Sure. I mean, I'd say
Yeah.
sure.
I
Yeah.
would say if you've got the quote unquote physical availability of adapters, right? Whether that's truly physical or they are, virtually provisioned via something like a UCS manager.
Well, I
I
think
think
we've.
go ahead.
I
ahead,
think
Shane.
I think we've uncovered another podcast.
Yeah.
I was gonna say I don't see a big difference between a virtual switch and a distributed switch anymore because of how much management and touching I've had to do with a distributed switch.
Yeah.
I feel like I've gone through enough issues with it that I'm not worried about stepping in any traps with a distributed switch.
yes.
So that makes me more comfortable with it.
But I also feel more comfortable, sure. But I think a equal amount of work or similar amount of work, there are more trapdoors for a DV switch than there are for a standard switch.
I would agree with that, but I think the amount of management you got to do when you got that many standard switches per host and your environment gets big, it gets to be a lot more.
Ansible.
You're right. You screw one thing up and it's affected everywhere, or you miss something because you got to go touch a bunch of different things.
Yeah.
And it's
What's
isolated
different about
and
this
weird,
host?
and you don't know
Yeah.
about it, right? That's what it comes down to. What I say
Yep.
it comes down to.
Yeah, I was. This is not everybody can provision from bare metal, but I did just provision a bunch of ESXi servers for a customer that needed to be provisioned identically with Pixie booting and then a kickstart file. So it's a combination. Pixie just gets your OS installed, but then you can also say, hey, when you're done installing, here's this config file, run these commands. And it basically is a combination, but you can throw in ESX CLI commands into that file, and it will go ahead and create local users. It'll create your vSwitches, as long as you know your VM NICs, and after your first one, you know what that pattern looks like, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and building all of that. And, boot to install to configuration with a handful of 30-second sleep commands thrown in there, and you're inside 6 or 7 minutes, basically a fully provisioned and configured ESXi server, which is pretty neat.
Yeah.
Yeah, package that up and get that out to us so that we can make those installs a little better. When we talk
Put
about
it in the Slack
automation,
channel.
when we talk about
Well, I mean,
automation, I think us and doing that is the one that comes the most beneficial, right?
Yep. I mean, you got to get a Pixie server up on your local network. I have, an isolated VLAN doing all of that. My Mac laptop had a Wi-Fi connection to my normal Wi-Fi. I had a hardline connection into this Pixie network, and I had a hardline connection into the other half of my switch, which is just an isolated bubble for offline stuff. It's a fun little lab out there.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, Shane, we can expect to hear your voice and see your face. It's right now it's virtual, I'm assuming at this point. You're probably putting all kinds of trip lines in. If you were saying we're going to try for physical, you might as well just be more conservative this time around. But hopefully next year, we'll be.
I think we're planning virtual right at this point in time, but hopefully, we can get in-person classes going.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah. I think the shoulder surfing aspect of the physical nature is great, right? So, what are you looking at? And that's one thing that you and May and Matt have done a fantastic job with the breakout rooms. Like, I can't believe it works is really what I want to say, but it does. But I think we would all appreciate being able to just like, show me what you're looking at here. And you point a finger. Oh, no, over there, virtually. I would love Zoom to have a virtual laser pointer. That would be cool.
There you go. Yep. I'll even add, if I can, that we're still building out some of the advanced curriculum. So if you are interested in the course, ping us at IVOXY, and we'll be happy to answer if we can incorporate what you're looking for as an advanced topic, or we can definitely verify that yes, we are covering that.
I like that. A call to arms, basically a crowdsourced education. Because that's what we've done historically, right? We've had plenty of customized classes with our customers. We've gone on site to customers and gone through 3 or 4 day custom classes on Veeam or something, and setting up Sure Backup and all of that. And that's been, I think, one of our strengths too. We're not teaching to a test. We're teaching to practical, hands-on
Real world.
manageability, and being able to take advantage of your of your significant investment. Right? We want to make sure that you have the power to manage it well
and keep your job.
Yes. Well, Shane, thanks for joining Matt and I this morning. It's been great to see you and great to chat with you.
Absolutely. I'd be happy to come back.
Sometimes I feel like we should just get on the Zoom call and just hit record right away without saying anything and just go.
See what happens.
Because
there we
sometimes
go.
we
Do
have
the
5,
intro
6,
in
7 minutes
post
of
or something.
conversation.
Yeah.
Right, and I'm just like, oh man, that would have been a good, just natural conversation for the podcast. But alas, next time.
Awesome, gents.
Maybe we do that and then we start doing outtakes or something at the end.
Might not be a bad idea. But we have to trust everybody to record too.
Yeah.
So there's that. You put a lot of work on me, Coz, in
Holy
post.
cow,
I'm not, I'm not a piece of meat.
You're just one guy.
Just one guy.
Yeah.
Tell me when there's 28 hours in a day. Let me know. I want to know first. All right, everyone. But for Shane and for Matt, I am Matt. Thanks for listening to yet another episode of Data Center Therapy. Have a great day, everyone.
All right. See you guys.